Illinois legislators return to the Capitol on Tuesday, where they're scheduled till Thursday. There's a lot of committee hearings. There's going to be surely an expectation of some fireworks on the House floor, at least. We don't really hear too much on the Senate floor until they get into heated debate about legislation, but we've already seen some fireworks in the House. Look at the past videos from last week, the segments showing, the politics of Washington, D.C. definitely playing out in the Illinois Statehouse. But listen, committee hearings are going to be abundant this week. We're in that period of legislative session where there's a lot of bills that have been filed, all right, and they've got to go through. In the process of getting these bills heard, there has to be 3 readings, goes through committee, get a vote in committee, then you get on the floor, and then it can pass the floor before it goes to the next chamber, where the same process plays out. Committee, 3 hearings, vote on the floor, and then after both chambers, the bill passes, it goes to the governor's desk, who can then sign it or veto it or modify it. So we're in the really early process here of spring session, where a lot of bills are going through committees. And if you go and look at ilga.gov, and I'll walk you through this so you can take a look for yourself. But if you go to ilga.gov, you will be able to see that you've got House, for instance. Let's just go to schedules. I checked the Senate schedule, and they didn't have anything listed for bills to be heard this week. But another lesson, I guess, is important. They can waive the rules at any time. Democrats have the majority in both the House and the Senate, so they can waive posting rules, which they'll do a lot later on throughout session. But so go to the House schedule, click on legislation schedules. And I'm just clicking on legislation scheduled in House this week. And it's a long one. All right. There's tons and tons and tons and tons of stuff here. But if you go through it all, you'll be able to fine tune and see different measures coming up. Listen, it's Monday, feel weird, lost an hour of sleep over the weekend. Well, there's a couple of bills that could come up in the state government committee this week that deal with getting rid of the time change and having permanent daylight savings time. And there's actually 2 measures here. You've got one from a Republican and one from a Democrat. So if you've got a bipartisan, approach to getting rid of daylight savings, maybe we'll have that happen here in Illinois. So it looks like this measure is going to be heard in the State Government Administration Committee. You've got one from Bob Morgan, one from Brad Halbrook, Republican and Democrat. Halbrook's the Republican, Morgan's the Democrat. But that's going to be in the State Government Committee coming up on the 12th, which is Wednesday, 2 p.m. So if you're really passionate about that, that might be something you want to watch and see. But then you get into some other measures that could come up this week. And I want to reiterate, this is not certain, right? These are bills that are put into committees, and these committees are scheduled for the week. Will they talk about these bills that are listed on this bills in committee this week page? Not guaranteed, right? Or they could possibly waive rules and put other bills in. But regardless, this is what they have planned for the week, at least when it comes to legislation that could be heard in a committee. And I understand this is in the weeds and the minutia of it all, but this is where we're at in the legislative process. So in the Judiciary Committee, there could be some measures brought up dealing with firearms and polling places. Bob Morgan in the Judiciary Committee on Tuesday afternoon could have House Bill 34 brought up, and he's got a committee amendment there as well, and you can see that in the posting. Then we also have another gun violence prevention committee that's scheduled for Wednesday. They're going to be talking about the safe gun storage and pediatricians. So let's just take a look here of what this bill ultimately says as we pull it up. It amends the Department of Public Health powers and duties law of the Civil Administrative Code of Illinois, requires the Department of Public Health to ensure that pediatricians ask about the presence of guns in homes and distribute safe gun storage information to individuals with guns in a home with a child. So I imagine that the Gun Violence Prevention Committee, if this is brought up, you're going to have some pretty heated discussion as they likely become heated, especially around the firearms space. All right, here's some more gun legislation that could come up in the Gun Violence Prevention Committee, another safe storage measure. Then you also have Maura Hirschauer, Democrat from Batavia, has House Bill 1790, which I've heard the Illinois State Rifle Association propose this, and that is to have an income tax credit for the eligible purchase of a firearm safety device. So again, this is a measure that is in committee. Could it be brought up? We'll be watching that again coming up on Wednesday in the Firearm Gun Violence Prevention Committee. But you also have in Revenue and Finance, another measure that deals with firearms. This one coming from Rita Mayfield, and it deals with taxing firearms. So what's we got here? We got... It would amend the Use Tax Act and the Service Use Tax Act, the Service Occupation Tax Act, and Retailer's Occupation Tax, imposing a 3 3/4% surcharge on firearms and firearm components and parts. That's currently being challenged in Cook County. I believe the case that Todd Vandermite has, and we'll have to follow up on that about the taxation of Second Amendment privileges. People will call them rights, and there's a Second Amendment right to keep and own a firearm and bear arms. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right to keep and bear arms of the people shall not be infringed. So will that have some conversation in Revenue and Finance? Again, it's in committee, but it has not moved yet, and it could come up when they have a hearing at 4 p.m. Tuesday, so Tuesday afternoon. You've got other measures here dealing with a FOID card and CCL expiration, maybe requiring a firearm safety course with the FOID card, leveling some penalties for people who lose a firearm, for instance. But again, these are just measures that could come up in committee. They're listed on this legislation scheduled for the week page, which is a long list. But I also want to just take a moment here before we get into some other measures and just real overview here. If you look at Speaker Welch's list, I want people to understand this. This is kind of, again, we're in the early phases of the legislature. May 31st is the deadline to pass bills, including the budget, with a simple majority. And if they don't pass anything, before May 31st and they want to try to do it afterwards, it takes a super majority if they want the measure to go into effect immediately. Just some of the minutia detail there. But as we get close to the end of the deadline, May 31st, there's going to be some priorities that pop up that they weren't necessarily thinking about back in April or back in March, that they need to get across the finish line. And that's where we have shell bills come in. And this is an example of what all the shell bills are. So Speaker Welch has just a list of dozens and dozens and dozens of bills. For instance, a lot of them, if they have a cash sign next to them, it deals with the budget. So the Arts Council, how much is the Arts Council looking to get? We'll open that up, and you can tell here that it's really just a kind of placeholder, because the Arts Council is not going to ask for $2. Right? They're not going to be asking for $2. Just as, the Education Labor Relations Board, they're not going to ask for, I bet it's $2. Yep, $2. See, so these are considered kind of shell bills, and they go even further than that. If you keep scrolling through Speaker Welch's bills, of course, all the budget bills are going to have, just general $2 provision, which they'll amend as they go through the budget process. But let's just take a random bill here from Animals and Tech, and you open that up, and it'll show you that it's an amendment for the Illinois Brand Act. Makes a technical change, right? Okay, what's that technical change? If you scroll up to full text, you'll see the actual bill is filed, and all it does is it replaces the word "and" with "and," right? So this is kind of the shell bill type of system that Illinois leaders on both sides, even Republican leader Tony McCombie, has her own list of dozens and dozens of shell bills that are filed. So that's just a little bit of kind of insight, right, of where we're at in the process, how these bills are going to advance through committees, how you can get a little bit of an ahead as to what's coming up, but then also understanding all the shell bills that there are and how those could rear themselves around the last week of session, depending on if a shell bill with replacing with the passed the House and is now in the Senate. Then the Senate can take that House bill, gut it, and then pass it with new legislation into the House, and they can get that through quicker in the last week of session. So we'll be watching all of that. That's my job, is to distill this down and to let you understand how this process works. But there's tons of other things in committee. I'm just going to scroll through some of these, right? And a lot of these are really controversial. The Homeschool Act, you've heard a lot about this. Last week, you had the Cherry Pie Day with homeschoolers showing up to the Capitol to lobby their lawmakers to say they want homeschool freedom. So that could come up in the Education Policy Committee on Wednesday in the morning at 8 a.m. So that's going to be an interesting hearing. You've got changes to the Trust Act that Lisa Hernandez is looking for. What does this do? This is coming up in the Executive Committee on Wednesday morning. It amends the Trust Act, which is the law that a lot of people say makes the state a sanctuary state. And it says provides that law enforcement may not retain information regarding the citizenship or immigration status of place of birth of any individual, given any immigration access, including a telephone or other communication medium, rather than only including by telephone, to any individual who's in that agency's custody. So again, looking to modify the Trust Act, and Lisa Hernandez is a Democrat leader in the House. You've got Maurice West wanting to have a measure facilitate voting for all. This measure seems to change the language on what exactly is an eligible citizen. Says facilitating voting by all eligible citizens act provides that all eligible citizens shall cast a ballot in every general election. Provides that an eligible citizen who casts a ballot in a general election shall satisfy the requirements. So provides all eligible citizens shall cast. So is that it's a difference between shall and may. That's interesting. That's going to possibly come up in the Ethics and Elections Committee. So that's one to watch. You've got others pushing for benefit changes to Tier 2. You've got what could be a very taxpayer-heavy Build Illinois Homes Act to help facilitate some more affordable housing. That could come up. You've got stuff impacting sprinklers and sparklers, rather. Fireworks, right? Bob Rita, state representative, he's been pushing for this to legalize certain types of fireworks for some time, but we'll see if that goes anywhere. I think he had like a multi-million-dollar revenue projection that could have brought in. So who knows? Maybe we'll get back to that conversation. They want to fix, Republicans, some Democrats want to address the estate tax. That could come up as well. The Food Truck Freedom Act. This is another issue that's been kind of perennial. Every year it seems to come up, but giving food trucks more ability to conduct a business. Then you get into different types of environmental issues that could come up, including looking to go into plastic disposable foodware and limiting that, regulating it, single-use plastic bans, maybe in elementary schools. You've got a bill there from Tara Costa Howard, recycling beverage containers, plastic bag reduction. This pre-treated seed ban oil from State Representative Will Guzzardi might be interesting. Farmers could take note here. It amends the Illinois Pesticide Act, provides that notwithstanding any other provision of law, no person shall produce ethanol using seeds that have been treated with a pesticide. So ethanol is, what's typically being put into certain types of gasoline, and Will Guzzardi's bill would essentially say if the soy from this lot was treated with pesticides, you can't use ethanol. You can't make ethanol with it. So maybe that'll get some debate in committee. Then you get a whole host of other things. Lobbying fees, lobbying prohibitions, making the judicial branch open to the courts, which I think is an interesting one that a lot of people, at least from sources that call me and find my number on the internet, and they have a lot of issues with the judicial system. So maybe opening the judicial system up to FOIA. Some people are looking to do that. You've got ranked choice voting that could come up this week as well. Plus, making sure that here with State Representative Cam Buckner, he's got a bill that would essentially say no-knock warrants cannot be allowed for controlled substance possession, if that's the only thing that is on the warrant. Now, it does go further and says if the warrant includes the controlled substance possession, and even goes as far as to say that it's known it's not for personal use, then that might allow for a no-knock warrant. But regardless, wanting to change some of those criminal justice requirements. And then you get things like State Representative Chris Miller. In state government, he could have his measure to allow for for individuals with bona fide religious exemptions to not have their photo taken on an ID card. So again, just some of the variety of things that could come up at the Illinois Capitol this week, stuff that we're likely going to be hearing about all throughout the week. And I wanted to take time on this Monday as we are all experiencing a little bit of sleep depravity. Deprivation. See, I can't even speak this morning. I'm losing an hour of sleep. So maybe there will be a substantive conversation about Representative Bob Morgan and Representative Brad Halbrook's permanent daylight savings time measure. Then we get into the debate. Do we want to keep daylight savings time permanent, or do we want to keep the other one permanent? Which one are we going to go with? I don't know. All right, it's Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning here as we break down things you need to know to get going on with your day here in the land of Lincoln.